Hey everyone, this is George Couros with a solo episode of the Innovators Mindset Podcast. And a book I've been reading lately, and I shared about it recently, is The AI-Driven Leader by Geoff Woods. And it's really got me thinking about a lot of different things in education. And I'm really trying to get in the habit of using AI in different ways. The thing with artificial intelligence is not hard. It really isn't hard to use. If you don't know how to use it, ask it. It will give you some suggestions. That's the thing that's really fascinating to me. It is actually the habit of it. And once you get in the habit of it, then you start thinking about how you utilize it in different ways. And one of the best ways that I have thought about using it is actually as a second brain. This is something I gleaned from a podcast I was watching from Minority Mindset. He was talking about how you can use it as a second brain. Some people say as a thought partner. And you get into the habit and you start utilizing this. So I'm trying to model some ideas and some usage of this. And the thing that I'm going to address today is, can AI teach empathy? And short answer is no. It cannot teach empathy. But can you actually leverage it to be more empathetic and understand the perspectives of other people? Absolutely. And so I want to kind of go through an exercise that I talked about and shared. And so I recently wrote a blog post about mental health and the focus on rumination. And if you don't really understand what rumination is, it is basically the more you dwell on a problem, the worse the problem gets. And it's not necessarily helpful. And there's lots of research on this that kind of backs me up on this. And so instead of focusing constantly on your problems, what are the opportunities? What are the things that you look at? So I wrote this blog post on this, and I've always talked about this, what I call a 360-degree view of writing, is that what are you trying to address that will be pushed back to what you're sharing before someone else shares it with you? And so I think this is one of the beautiful things about writing, is that you especially, and I should say writing publicly. When you write publicly, it is the ability to kind of understand what will be the challenge to this that I might be missing and might be thinking about, and trying to address it in your writing. I feel that even through the process of writing in a blog, in an open space, it does develop some empathy if you're willing to kind of consider other ideas. So I wrote about some of my experiences, some of the things that, helped me. And to be honest with you, the blog is not published, and there's a reason it's not published. As I was kind of going through the process, I actually just didn't feel, there's something that just wasn't sitting with me right in what I was writing and what I was sharing. And there's this thing with me that I've kind of learned, if I don't feel comfortable posting something online, if I get this kind of like uncomfortable feeling, it's probably not a good idea. So it's just something was just bugging me about it. So instead of just kind of shelving it and not posting it, I actually went in and opened ChatGPT, and then I just actually wrote the post, or I just copied and pasted the post, and then I actually asked this question: any challenges to this post? And a lot of people talk about like these really well thought out prompts. Like, it was literally any challenges to this post. That's it. And there were some challenges. There are some challenges here. And it was actually, this was a response to, I saw Charlie Peck in MESPA, Minnesota Elementary School Principals. And she asked the question, like, why are we constantly struggling with mental health in our education system? So I actually wanted to kind of give some of my insights, some of my thinking. So AI like immediately said, and it kind of gave me like the compliment sandwich. Like, it said some nice stuff in this. It actually, I'll read this to you. And I want to read some of the things it said and kind of give you some thinking on this as well. It says, while your post presents a valuable perspective on shifting the focus from mental health struggles to opportunities for growth and improvement in education, there are a few potential challenges or areas that can be discussed further to make this post even more impactful. So it was like, yeah, it's not that good. There's some stuff that you got to address. And so I'm going to read what it actually challenged me on. And I think there's some there's some things that I agree with, and there's actually some things I disagree with, or maybe there's some nuance to it. So, and part of it too is I don't think that when I write something, the mentality is that I need to agree with the majority. And I think that's the easy thing, right? Like to just say like, hey, here's the thing everyone else is saying, so now I also say it. So I think sometimes it's like, hey, have we thought about this? Have we thought about this? So it gave me 5 points, and I'll kind of like read that. The headline said the oversimplification of mental health issues. And I think this was actually the thing that really I struggled with the most, was that I was like, I know this is a very touchy subject, and I didn't want to downplay it. So this is why I didn't publish the post, because this is obviously, it's more of like, hey, here's my personal story. Here's how I deal with things. But I didn't want to downplay someone else's experience. You're right. And so I think there's always this kind of fine balances. Like someone says, well, you don't understand this. Right. I'm not saying I understand it. What I am saying is this is my experience. And so I think sharing some of our own experiences, while it might not gravitate to the majority, it might help some. And so that's always been a little bit, but that's really kind of what I know. This is very complicated. So I just wanted to be thoughtful about this. And it said, while you acknowledge mental health struggles in both students and educators, the post might be seen as oversimplifying the complexity of mental health issues. Mental health and education multifaceted, with causes range from systemic pressures to personal challenges. Offering more concrete examples or solutions for mental health support might strengthen the argument. I don't agree with everything here too, but I like that it gives me a different perspective, because I don't know if I'm the person to be giving concrete examples of. I can give you examples of what I've done, but I don't know if I could say like, you should do this, because that is not my space. Here's things that have helped me is very different than here's things I think will help you. And that's always kind of been something I've been really thoughtful of, is that I don't want to tell someone else how to do the thing. I just want to share my experience, and then you glean what you can from it. Some of it might work, an alteration of what it might work. So that was why, I was really thoughtful, but it is a very touchy subject. The next one, it said, the roles of school in addressing mental health. And this one I really connected with. The post suggests shifting focus to finding solutions rather than dwelling on problems. While it's a valuable mindset, it's important to note that schools may not have the resources to address every mental health challenge effectively. Acknowledging that schools need better support systems or additional resources could add depth to the conversation. This one really connected with me, because I actually don't think that, and I'm being thoughtful of how I share this, it is the role of schools to deal with mental health. We have to deal with it, but I don't know, like, we're not meant to be the solution. Those are for mental health professionals, which is not teachers. I think of my role when I was teaching, I'm not the person, like, I can, connect you with people that could help you, but I don't think it's the role of schools to do that. This one. The number 3 pushback it gave me, idealizing social media. And this one, because one of the things I talked about in the post is how do you actually, and this is like a mental health thing, is that when I talked about, we always focus on the negatives of social media, but why do we not show positives and like actually teach people how to leverage it? That was one of the things I talked about, and it shared this, and this is kind of an interesting thing. While you rightly highlight the positive opportunities social media can provide, such as creating a digital portfolio, it might be worthwhile to recognize the darker side of social media. The constant pressure to curate a perfect image online can negatively impact mental health, especially for young people. A balanced approach to this topic, acknowledging both the benefits and potential harms of social media, would offer a more comprehensive view. Now, this is something that this is where I was like, wait a minute. I don't know if I totally agree with some of these assessments. And I think that's where some of the pushback is. It is really easy. And I received a tweet because I talked about this just last, I think, Friday with a group, saying, yeah, there is some negative stuff. There is some definitely potential harms. But if you don't teach kids how to leverage this, we're not actually teaching them how to be safe. And the thing that really stuck out to me is that if you constantly hammer the negatives, if you are like the Jonathan Haidt anxious generation, here's the bad, here's the bad, here's the bad, no one is saying, why don't you focus, or I shouldn't say no one. There's not like a big call for like, share the positive, share the leverage. It's like, yeah, it's negative, get rid of it, which doesn't help kids long-term. It's something like, hey, are we helping kids, or are we just saying this is not our problem? Hopefully we'll deal with it later after they're under our care. So as much as I do agree, because I always say like, hey, we got to be addressing cyberbullying. We have to teach kids, hey, like, do not get so focused on basically what you see, because it's like ESPN Sports Center, it's like highlights, but you have to realize that Sports Center is not the whole game. So I think there is like, I try to address both of these things, but it's rare that I see a call for the people who say this is negative, this is bad. Like, why don't you just share some of the positives? I don't see that as much as I look. And so that was kind of an interesting perspective for me. Again, lack of specific solutions. And I actually agree with this, but I'm just trying to, it's a blog post. It's not like a fix. So I get it. And then the last one, it said the tone of resilience versus reality. The tone of post suggests a strong message of resilience and fighting hope, but some readers might interpret this as downplaying real struggles. Mental health challenges, especially in education, are complex, and it's important to balance the optimism with an acknowledgement that overcome these challenges is often a long, difficult process that requires consistent support. I agree with this, and I also made me think like, okay, what was the point of the post? Was it to share some of my story and hopefully through some of the things I learned could help? Or was it to like, hey, if you do these 5 things or this? So there's kind of like, I'm kind of like gray. All that being said, this isn't meant to say, the whole reason I did this was to get some different perspectives. And I think based on these 5 things, there's things I would definitely change in the post and definitely write, which is because I was like, okay, yeah, I can understand how I address this, but it doesn't mean I totally 100% agree and would do this in a totally different way. But here's something I actually did, and this is why you're not reading the post right now. I actually, after these things, I just wrote the prompt, can you rewrite this post to address these issues? So I actually, I could have easily copied and pasted this, but I didn't want to, because then it's AI providing a perspective that I might not have. And I felt like I need to really kind of dig into this more myself. I need to understand this. I don't need AI to fix this for me, but I actually need to go explore more, kind of look at some things, address some of these things. And it actually wrote a post that's honestly really good. And it would actually probably have people cheering like, yeah, that's totally, yeah, like understanding this stuff. But it wasn't my perspective. It was, basically AI filling in the blanks that I wasn't able to fill in myself. And so I get that, but that's why I wanted to share this, is because it did get me kind of thinking about different experiences. And it doesn't mean you should just say, because like if you look at it, the things that it was sharing in the post I thought was really, really fascinating is, here is the majority feeling on this topic, but is that right? Is that necessarily right? If we just agree just for the sake of agreeing, so we don't actually provide different perspectives, that's not really teaching empathy either. So there's actually a time that I was asking some questions about, something in the world, and it would just basically, you can tell there's a bias in the reporting to it. So I said, so no matter what I asked, it was going to say bias. So I said, okay, I want you to take a viewpoint that opposes this and actually go through your reasoning why you would oppose this. So I actually asked it to challenge itself. And then it was kind of interesting. And I think that's when I'm talking about this idea of empathy. Do we actually understand the perspective of others, the people who don't necessarily agree with us? So whatever you're like, hey, this is actually something I think, share those ideas, challenge it. Tell me what you would address. I think that's where the empathy can actually come in. It doesn't mean you necessarily agree with it, but it can give you perspectives that you don't have yourself, or it can push you to go into people's perspectives that you don't necessarily understand. And I think this would be a really valuable tool, if you're writing an essay, if you're a high school student and you're saying, okay, challenge me on this. And like, why will you challenge me? Getting some different perspectives. Like I said, AI cannot teach you empathy, but can you leverage it to actually be more empathetic of, other people's perspectives? There's a really, I can't remember where the quote came from. And it was basically about the idea of, if you want to debate somebody, that if you're really successful at a debate, you can actually make their arguments for them, that their arguments so well that you can actually make them. And if you understand a different a person's perspective in a better way. Now, of course, we can't be that person, but if you kind of can understand and leverage some of these tools to actually get different perspectives from your own, it can actually make the world a better place, and it can address some of the things before they're brought to your attention. So I just thought it was like a really interesting perspective. And it is something I'm trying to get better at, is how am I using this to kind of address things that I'm not paying attention to? So for example, let's say you're a school leader, district leader, and you're saying to yourself, hey, here are some strategic things or some ideas that we want to do with our community. What's some of the pushback we might get from our, community? That's actually a really good exercise to kind of go through this and say like, hey, here are some of the things that you might get challenged on and why. And actually going through that process and understanding that it is not necessarily that people will disagree with you, but you're trying to get a variance of perspectives. And this is one of the beautiful things, is that you ask that question to challenge you. And like I said, the challenge was simply this: any challenges to this post? That was it. Wasn't really complicated. And it gave me a different perspective I had not really thought about. And so I thought that was a really good process. And so if you are writing something, if you're creating something and you're like, what is a pushback? If you're getting that feeling that I felt, throw it into a chat GPT, throw it into like whatever AI tool you use, and ask for the challenges back. I think that can help us develop empathy in a way that you might not be able to leverage before. So it's just something that I thought was really interesting. And I want to share because this is something I'm still learning. I'm still trying to develop. And I think it can actually, I don't think technology makes you smarter. I think how you leverage technology can make you smarter. That to me, technology can make you dumber if you're not thoughtful of it. Because I could have just said, write the post, which is maybe dumber. But writing it out, asking for the challenges, and then taking a step back, saying, you know what, I need to kind of dig into this a little bit. And it doesn't mean I'm going to do everything it says, but at least I have a different understanding of perspectives that, are different from my own. That could be really, really helpful. I just want to share that with you all. I think it's kind of an interesting thing. But I'm trying to learn this, and I'm trying to model my learning with you. And so I'm kind of outing myself like, yeah, I wrote a post I would never publish because there's so many issues with it. And I get that, and I need to work on it. I wanted to share that with you. I hope you got something out of this. Maybe a tool that you use. If it helped you in any way, let me know. Let me know in a way that you might actually leverage this to kind of push back on some of the things that you do. I'd love to hear that. But thanks for your time today. Thanks for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.